So let's start with introduction. So I'm Doug Hanna. I just kind of do the fumbling moderating of this group. Been a resident in town 40 something years. Just last night, Sarah and I were recounting when your term started, because I know you said 25 years, and whether in fact it was immediately after Doug started, which apparently it was. So anyway, that's me.
Hi, Dave, I'm Kathleen Donovan. I'm on the Library Board of Trustees, 34-year Natick resident. Since I joined this group, I now volunteer with Keep Natick Beautiful. I'm probably one of the few core members here who has not been a town meeting member, but I actually listen to them without being a town meeting member, so I'm interested in all things Natick.
Hi, Bill Ramage. I volunteer with Keep Natick Beautiful, I'm trail steward at Pegan Cove. I volunteer with Eco Natick. I volunteer with the Community Preservation Committee and the church, First Church Natick, and we're thankful that you showed up and we had so much community support. So thank you.
I'm Donna McKenzie. It's great to see you again. I just love Natick. I'm a town meeting member and I'm involved in several municipal committees. Pleasure to be here.
Great. And then online, in the order that I'm seeing people, Martin.
Yeah, Martin Kessel. I'm the co-host of Coffee with a Purpose, and I've calculated how long I've been in Natick. Altogether, 68 years.
Gee. Okay. Elaine. Elaine, do you want to say hi? Not getting her right now. Interesting. Let's move on to Roger Luckman.
Hi, David. Good to see you. 30-year resident of Natick. And volunteer with Eco Natick and a former member of the Sustainability Committee here, and very much interested in climate change and our net zero plan in Natick.
Thanks, Roger. Let's see, Laura.
Hi there. Good morning.
Or looks like you got an extra audio device connected.
No, I know.
Yeah, all right, we should fix that.
Just a citizen for over 55 years.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Rick.
Hey, David, you know, some of my interests, but not all. And it's great to have you on. I'm really glad you were able to take the time to do this now with an election coming up, and look forward to talking to you. Thanks.
No, I see Bev is on too. Bev. She there?
She may not be able to unmute at the moment.
Sorry. Okay, I'm just unmuting, but I'm not putting on video. I've got COVID and I'm just listening in. I might throw a question in the chat, but I'm Martin's wife, and I appreciate David Linsky being on. Thank you.
Thanks, Bev. Let's see who's next. Pat Conaway.
Good morning. Good morning, David.
Hey,
Pat Conaway, Keep Natick Beautiful.
Great. Tom Daly.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tom. 30 something year resident of Natick. I was a town meeting member and look forward to hearing what you say.
Thanks, Tom. Let's see who's next. Carrie, are you there? No.
How about that? Good morning, David. It's nice to see you on Wednesday night. Thanks. Good talking to you. And you can see you got some of your favorite environmental friends here meeting with you. Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great. Let's see. Cindy Bates. Okay.
Good morning. I'm a almost 5-year resident in Natick. I'm a Keep Natick Beautiful volunteer and trail steward, and generally interested in local happenings. Thank you for being here.
And Debbie Marion. Possibly away from her computer.
How about that? Is that better?
It is.
Thanks. Hi, good morning, and thank you for being here, David.
Thanks. Erie, Laura's husband, I believe. Might not be there. Okay. Catherine Duran.
Hi, Catherine Doran. I'm coming up on 30 years living in Natick, and I can't believe that Representative Linsky has only been serving for 25. It's making me feel very old, and I'm glad to be here.
Me too, Catherine.
Let's see, who else have we got here? Sally Hopkins?
Good morning. Having trouble unmuting there. It's a pleasure to be here at CWAP and looking forward very much to hearing what you have to say, Representative Linsky. And thanks for being with us because we're a group of listeners and voters.
For sure. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Hanna, Doug's wife. Interested in all things Natick, particular focus on environmental issues are a passion of mine, town meeting member and sort of all around volunteer around town, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
And Paul Carew? Well, you know who Paul is. Great. I think that's just about everybody. I apologize if I missed somebody. My display is a little bit different than the way I'm used to, but why don't we get going?
Elaine?
Elaine.
Oh, yes, Elaine. Hi, Elaine. Yeah.
Longtime involvement with disability rights, co-founder of the Adaptive Environment Center, now known as the Institute for Human-Centered Design. Okay.
Great. And we've had Jamin just join us in person. Hi, Jamin. We were just doing introductions. I know David knows who you are. So
I'm unmuted, Martin. Good morning, David. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Always a pleasure to see you, hear you. So looking forward to this.
great, cool. Yeah, so we'll turn the floor over to you. Speak as long as you want. You can take questions during, afterwards. We'll just open it up for questions. I know folks have a lot of questions. We're really trying to. So when we have multiple candidates running for an office, we try to have each candidate on, but not in a debate format. It's more kind of a single candidate forum. So just to be clear, we've asked Jamin, it's fine for him to, attend and participate, but we're really not looking for a lot of, back and forth. Jamin will be coming next week, and you're certainly welcome to.
I mean, you're welcome to stay here,
Yeah.
But there's sort of unwritten rules, I'm gonna say, Jamin. Sure. And this is probably a violation of one of them. I'm gonna give you your time. Why don't you give me my time? Okay, you showed up at my office hours this week. You're a constituent, you have a right to do that. You eavesdropped on conversations that I had with other people. There's a certain amount of protocol and, you can sit here, I guess, but, try to play by the rules, okay?
I don't mind leaving if that you prefer me to go online.
I'm open to anything here. I've felt that, as a constituent, anybody is welcome to attend, but if you think it's really gonna put.
No, that's fine. He can sit there.
Yeah.
But, this is an opportunity for other people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, right. We've actually asked him not to speak unless he's name checked. If you were to say, say, well,
All right, so
here we go.
anyway, so you want an introduction?
Yeah.
All right, hi, everybody. I know most of you that are online and in the room. But in case you don't, I'll go through a little bit of my background first, and then I'm gonna talk about the job of state representative and the challenge of being a state representative in 2024 and going forward, okay? So in terms of background, as most people know, I'm a lifelong Natick resident. Went to Benham, went to Wilson, went to Natick High School, graduated Natick High School, went to Colby College in Waterville, Maine, have a degree in government, served, while I was in college, I served as an intern in the congressional office, an American hero by the name of Reverend Robert Trinan. when I was in Washington for a semester, came back, went to Boston College Law School, graduated Boston College Law School, passed the bar, and then was appointed the youngest assistant district attorney in Middlesex County history by my mentor, Scott Harshbarger, who was the recently elected Middlesex County district attorney. I served a total of 14 years in the Middlesex DA's office as an assistant district attorney, prosecuting some of the most serious crimes in Massachusetts. And I had the honor of representing the Commonwealth in 25 first-degree murder cases, as well as thousands and thousands of other serious cases. But most importantly, in terms of my background, I have had, I'll say, a calling to public service. And that all started back when I was a child and then into my young teenager years. I grew up in Wethersfield. And I grew up at a time when the Vietnam War was going on. And my older brother, Al, was in the first year of draft eligibility, okay? And I have this distinct memory as a very young child, sitting on the screened-in porch on Sheffield Road in Wethersfield with my parents and my brothers, listening to the draft lottery and hoping that his number did not come up early. That was my political socialization, okay? And so thankfully he got a late number. But we were a family that was against the war in Vietnam. And I can remember in 1968, when I was 9 years old, leafleting for Eugene McCarthy and then for Bobby Kennedy because they were anti-war candidates. And from then on, I continued to work in Democratic politics, Democratic campaigns for George McGovern, for Jimmy Carter, numerous campaigns in Massachusetts, Mike Dukakis, all the way through every Barney Frank, every congressional Democratic candidate for years and years. At the same time, when I was in high school, I started getting involved in local Natick politics. And Ricky Ball and I were part of an organization. I was a teenager at the time called the Natick Good Government Association, where I got to meet and work with some wonderful people, many of whom gone, Marshall Leibowitz, Milton Gilbert, Sue Salamoff. I can go on and on and on, and I've been involved in local government in Natick since I was a teenager. And I took that, my first elected office was when I was still in law school at BC and I was living in Natick. I was elected to town meeting. And I was elected to town meeting for Wethersfield. And it's funny because I moved around town a lot since then. I was elected for town meeting in 3 or 4 different precincts. I served 14 years in town meeting. And I think that's really important because town meeting number 1 is Natick's state legislature. I mean, Natick's legislature. Town meeting makes the decision about what the town budget is, how much you spend on schools, how much you spend on your roads, how much you do this, and then it's the bylaws for the town too, both zoning bylaws and regular bylaws. And so that was my first introduction into how to be a legislator. I also served in an appointed position in town on the Native Conservation Commission. I've always had a very strong affinity for environmental issues. I'm a strong environmental person. Always had 100% environmental voting record in the state legislature. And just a couple of days ago, I was endorsed for re-election by the Environmental League of Massachusetts. I'm always endorsed by the environment. So anyways, what I'm saying is some people have a calling to do something in their lives. You know, for a religious person, it might be a calling to the priesthood or to the ministry or you know, or whatever. For me, it's public service. And I believe very strongly in the Hebrew phrase, tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is a phrase that means to heal the world. And how I interpret that means is that every person, no matter what, has some obligation to try to make this world a better place. For some people, it might be charity. For some people, it might be volunteer work. For some people, it might be something else. For me, it's public policy and public service. And I have a career, literally a lifetime of public service. In 1999, when Doug started, got appointed to the bench, I was serving as an assistant attorney. Martha Coakley was the DA at the time. And we had a conversation about it, and I decided to run. She had actually, before she was elected DA, she had run for state rep out of Dorchester and was beaten in the Democratic primary by Marty Walsh. Just a piece of trivia right there. And Marty and I, we obviously served together in the state legislature. We ended up being very, very close friends. And we used to talk about, even though our districts are so dissimilar, quite frankly, he represented Dorchester and I represented Natick, and at that time Sherburne and Millis, we had almost identical voting records because we had the same, we'll say, core values. And Marty went on to be with them, but that's a total tangent I went on. So anyway, so I've had the honor and the distinct pleasure of representing the 5th Middlesex District for the last 25 years. And I want to go through some of what has been important to me, some of what I have accomplished, and why I want to keep doing it, quite frankly. Okay. So anyways, I break this down into the 3 different parts of being a state legislator. And quite frankly, when I was first elected, even though I had all of that political and governmental experience, you know, much more so probably than a lot of people who get elected to state legislators, sure, you know. I had no idea, quite frankly, about what was involved in the job. So there's, as I see it, there are 3 distinct parts of being a state legislature. Number 1 is the part that you read about all the time, and that is your votes on the floor, committee work, passing statewide legislation. The second part is representing the communities or the towns, in my case, that are in your district and making sure that they get their fair share, or sometimes I like to say more than their fair share, of state funding, state grants, state projects. Being an advocate for, in my case, Natick, and then Sherburne and Millis, and that way. Okay. The third part is the part that I really didn't know anything about and how to do it when I first got elected, because it takes a long time before you figure it out. Actually, all of this takes a long time. And that is the constituent service aspect. The happiest part of my job, and probably the most important part of my job over the past 25 years, have been helping individual people and individual families when they have problems with government, helping their families. And let me tell you what that involves, quite frankly. It can be somebody who needs special needs services for a child. It can be somebody who needs health care. It could be somebody who needs rental assistance. It could be somebody who, you know, is missing an unemployment check and can't pay the bills. You know, there is nothing more important to me, and my staff have always known this, than when one of those people calls or emails or contacts us or sees me in the grocery store and says, "Can you help me?" Everything else gets dropped until that gets fixed. And my office, we looked it up the other day, there have been about 5,000 Natick, Sherburne, Millis, and Wayland families that we have helped with these types of issues over the last 25 years. This is the most important thing that we do. And, you know, if somebody's not getting the answer from, you know, that they need from a bureaucrat in the executive branch, I pick up the phone and I call the Secretary of Education or the Secretary of Human Services or whatever, and we get it fixed because they know who I am and what and how I feel. That's the most important thing to do. So let's go back a little bit and talk about those 3 different jobs and some of the things that I've been involved in and accomplished. So the first part, the legislative branch. Okay, the legislative issues, and then I'm gonna talk about what more needs to be done. So I have had the incredible honor of being involved in a number of issues over the past 25 years. So number one, and I will go to my grave with this one, 2003, 2004. I was one of the leaders in Massachusetts in the equal marriage movement when the SJC ordered, Massachusetts to have equal marriage. Some in the legislature, the Catholic Church, the other people, obviously in Massachusetts, tried to stop it. We had a constitutional convention. I was one of the 4 leaders in the Constitutional Convention, and I'll never, ever forget my speech. It's available online, and in the documentaries I'm featured in about when I talked about Natick's children. And very proud moment for me back then. So that was obviously a long time ago, but it will stay with me forever that I got to do that. Secondly, got to vote for the first in the nation universal health care law, what was then called Obamacare. Very important thing, became the model for Obamacare. Thirdly, I've been working my entire career on gun violence prevention. I have written most of Massachusetts gun laws. 2 weeks ago, the governor signed into law a sweeping change. 90% of that bill was mine. I wrote it, and I stand by it. It's one of the most important things I believe in. I saw it as a prosecutor for 14 years, standing over dead bodies, what guns can do. Massachusetts, as a result of the work that I have done, is the safest state in the nation, and we're going to keep it that way. School building assistance law. This is going to lead into the second part of the job. So Massachusetts had an old school building assistance program that didn't really have a funding source, wasn't working pretty well. So those of us in the state legislature realized that we needed to find a funding source to help cities and towns and school districts build new schools. We figured it out. We created a new Massachusetts School Building Authority. I had a big part of writing that, and let me tell you why. So at the time that we were rewriting the book, we knew that Natick High School, the old Natick High School, was going to need to be replaced. And the way that the whole program was going to work was that towns would get percentage points based on a variety of criteria that every town was going to be different in terms of what percentage the state would pay for a new building versus what percentage the town would have to pay for a new building. So because I was involved in the drafting of the law, and I knew that Natick High School was ready to go into the pipeline, I figured out a way we could get an extra percentage point here, an extra percentage point here, an extra percentage point here. And guess what? The first high school approved under the new MSBA program was after we passed that law. It's over there on West Street, and it's called Natick High School. And Natick got a huge percentage of it paid for because of the law that I helped draft, because I knew it was in the fight. Okay. Similarly, we had just built Wilson, and I made sure that Wilson got the funding out of the state, out of the new law, so that the town could recoup a lot of the costs, and we saved millions, literally millions of dollars in interest payments because of the way that we wrote that law, so that Wilson could get paid up. We got paid up front for it. Thirdly, Kennedy over in West Natick, same thing. I helped make sure that we got approved for Kennedy. So I realized I started the first job legislation, but I want you to realize how specifically how this benefits the town and ultimately the taxpayers in the town of Natick, because every dime that we get in state funds is a dime that we don't have to pay for in local property tax, quite frankly. So we'll talk some more about the second aspect of this. So I'm going to talk about Chapter 70 and then special education circuit breaker. Okay. The state historically has had very, very complicated rules in terms of state support for local school district education. I'm one of the few people in the state who actually understands it, because I've helped write a lot of it, the laws and the budgets on school funding, or at least the state support for school funding in both special ed and regular ed. And since as a result of that, since I have become state rep, state aid to Natick public schools has increased nearly 500%. 500. Okay, this is not an accident. This doesn't just happen. Okay, you know how to, you have to learn as a legislature how to write the rules, how to work the system, save your local school districts money, quite frankly. So this is not a job for the rookie. I'm just going to say that right here. You need to know how to do this, how to work the system, and you have to learn how to, quite frankly, get along with your colleagues. You know, there are 200 state legislators in Massachusetts, 160 in the House, 40 in the Senate. You're not going to agree on everything, but you have to learn how to build respect, how to learn collegiality, and understand how the system works to get these things done. And quite frankly, I'll put my record of getting things done either on a legislative basis, on a helping the district basis, or helping individual constituent basis out of next to anybody who's served in the state legislature over the past 25 years. You know, this stuff doesn't just happen. It really doesn't. And it takes some time to figure out how to do it. And you have to have patience, you have to have an understanding of your government, and you have to learn what works for your colleagues and what doesn't work for your colleagues. So where do we go from here? Because elections aren't about the past, elections are about the future, okay? So we still got some work to get done, quite frankly. And let me tell you, there's some things I want to get done locally, and there's some things that I want get done on a statewide basis. We've got to get climate change. We got to get a good climate change bill done. I'm disappointed the legislature hasn't finished that, quite frankly. It's a disappointment. We're still working on it, and I think that we'll get something done before the end of the year. But if we don't get it done, it better be first order of business come next session, quite frankly. Because for a lot of reasons it didn't happen. That's a major issue we have to get done. We've got a great housing bill done that I'm very excited about. And then we have to also get healthcare costs under control. This is obviously a national problem, and there are good national solutions to that. But this is another thing that you have to realize, is that one of the most important things that a state legislature, whether it's in Massachusetts or anywhere else, needs to be able to do is to, I'm going to quite frankly pick up the slack, because Congress has been so dysfunctional over the past few years. A lot of issues that quite frankly could be better solved on a national basis get diverted to have to be solved on a statewide basis. You know, gun control is an obvious example of that. I'd love to have federal gun control, but short of that, we have to do it on a state by state basis. Healthcare costs clearly could be better controlled at a federal level. Again, we have to do it here. Climate change, not just nationally, but it's an international issue, obviously. But we'll do what we can do on a statewide basis until Congress gets its act together. Similarly, the Supreme Court has dumped a lot of issues back on state government as well. Again, gun control, a lot of regulatory issues, they're falling back on the state government. All right, they're falling back on the state government to do. And that's why we need really good, effective, thoughtful, and yes, experienced state legislatures to be able to get things done. It's a challenge, I will say. Look, I'll be frank with you about, you know, the Massachusetts legislature. It's not always pretty. It's not always pretty, okay? But don't just look at the process and whether it's pretty or not. Look at the end result. Massachusetts has the best public education in the country. We have the best healthcare in the country. We have an incredibly strong economy. And, you know, our tax rate is, when you look at overall tax burden, Massachusetts is pretty much right in the middle of the 50 states on that. When you add up all the various taxes that people pay in various states, I think we're doing a pretty damn good job, quite frankly. Look at the end result, okay? You know, we just passed some big bills that got signed into law in the last few weeks in Massachusetts. We did the biggest housing production bill in the history of the Commonwealth. We actually cut taxes this session by $1.4 billion. Nobody realizes that we did it, but we did it. And we have a state budget that provides more human services, more public education, and more healthcare and more social services than any other state in the country. We're doing a damn good job. And I'm proud of everything that we have done and my role in that for the past 25 years. I have taken that calling for public service that I talked about and translated it into public service, into public policy. And I've translated it to public policy to advance legislation both on a statewide basis. I've translated it into public policy to help the towns that I represent in terms of funding and projects. I didn't talk about the community service center that started with an earmark that I put into the state budget to do. I didn't talk about the new MBTA station in downtown Natick. I didn't talk about all the solar projects around town that I helped get done. I didn't talk about every road and bridge project that you see going on right now. That stuff doesn't happen by accident, okay? But most importantly, I'm proud of the 5,000 families and individuals that my office and I have helped over the past 25 years. So that, I guess, is my 15-minute introduction. It's probably longer than that.
No, that's fine. That's been a great, I've got a whole list of questions, but Catherine's been very patient.
All right, I gotta have a glass of water here.
Yeah, Martin, how are we doing this? Do they have to, can they come off mute on their own or?
I believe they can. They should be able to. Give it a try.
My turn?
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, I would like to speak briefly about constituent services. 2 summers ago, I reached out to David Linsky because I was receiving treatment for depression that I desperately needed that was working, and my health insurance company refused to pay. And I had never reached out to any politician for any help. He responded immediately, connected me with his staffers. They went to bat for me, approached Tufts Health Plan. We were not successful. I'm still paying out of pocket, but I want to say he not only is my representative, but he represented me, and this is huge, and I am grateful. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Catherine. We'll still see what we can do for you.
Great, thank you, Bill.
Just like to second that constituent services. I had need of, I was advocating for some folks at the church. Called your office, and within an hour or two, I got the link to the place we needed to go to get the answer. So kudos, just really, really a great public service.
They, you know, like I said, that's the most important stuff we do.
How big is your staff, dude?
So currently,
people call.
Right,
Yeah.
so currently I have 2 full-time staffers. They're based at the State House. But they know that this is job one. And, you know, the rule in our office is every single email, every single call is responded to within 48 hours. It's usually less than that, quite frankly. But, and we take calls not just on state issues. You know, we'll get calls on federal issues, we'll get calls on local issues. Sometimes we can take care of it, but our practice on that is, just so you know, it's not, we won't just say, oh, that's a federal issue, call Congresswoman Clark or whatever. We'll take the information. We'll call Congresswoman Clark to make sure that they get back to it.
The other question I wanted to ask you, you mentioned briefly the climate bill. Could you just explain a little more about what happened? And
So here's the, look, we have a House, we have a Senate, we have a governor, we all have different ideas, and we have 200 legislators. We all have different ideas about what should be in it. There is substantial agreement between the governor, between the House, and between the Senate about certain aspects of it. A lot of it deals with electric transmission, siting, making it easier to produce electricity in Massachusetts. We've done an enormous amount of work already on wind and solar, but there's more to be done. The Senate bill went well beyond that agreement. They put in some things that, while we may agree with, I may personally agree with, the majority of the House didn't necessarily felt belonged in that bill. So I'm gonna use my hands for a second if people can see me.
Yeah.
So the House bill was like this. The Senate bill included all of that. The governor wanted all of that, but then the Senate bill was like this. So that's where a conference committee comes in. Conference committee couldn't come to an agreement. One way or another, we're gonna put a bill on the governor's desk. There's a number of procedural ways we can do this. The legislative session doesn't end until January 1st. Something will get done. Either we're gonna go back in on formal session. We already know we're going back in on the economic development bill. It could conceivably be folded into that. Or we could do enough so that we could pass a bill by unanimous consent in an informal session, put on the governor's desk, and then take up the matters that were left out of it after the first of the year. You know, we have a 2-year legislative session, okay? Bills are filed at the beginning of the first year. We do committee hearings generally in the first year. Stuff comes to the floor generally in the second year. But the work doesn't really stop. You know, a lot of times, particularly on a big subject, it takes more than one, sometimes more than 2 or 3 legislative cycles to be able to get a big bill done. So it's not like you start fresh, because, and that's where the continuity of legislator to legislator works. If you start with 200 new people every 2 years, you're gonna start this whole process over. And so actually this will lead into another topic. So I've had the privilege of being in a lot of national legislator groups where I have contacts and friends who are in other state legislatures around the country. I'm currently on the board of directors of what's called the DLCC, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, the official branch of the Democratic National Committee that does state legislative races around the country. So I get to sort of compare notes all the time with my colleagues in other state legislatures. And those state legislatures, where they are either part-time, they don't meet very often, or have very short legislative sessions, or they have term limits. What happens in those states, quite frankly, is it gives power, much more power, away from the state legislature, and it goes powers to two different groups. There's a lot more power to sitting bureaucracy, who are there for years and years and years in the executive branch, but there's a lot more power among lobbyists, quite frankly. When I talk to my colleagues in, say, Florida or Georgia, or some of the western states where they have term limits and they have very limited legislative sessions, the lobbyists run those branches, quite frankly. They do. And that's why it's important to elect people who have the background and the education and the experience to, quite frankly, stand up to the law. And to the sitting bureaucracy sometimes too. If you think that the job of a state legislator is what it is that you learn in your civics class or in your college political science class, you are out of your mind. It has nothing to do with that. As somebody who both took civics and was a political science major in college, and I talk to political science professors all the time, and they think they know what they're talking about how policy gets made, they're out of their minds. So it's not an academic exercise, it's a real politic with real people.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Got a couple more folks in line. Pat, I believe you're next. Just gotta come off.
Yes, David, I was gonna ask you a quick question about the possibilities for the expanded bottle bill and extended product responsibility movement. I don't know where it's bundled into. Maybe it's in the climate bill. I'm not sure. I just
Yeah,
wanted.
so I've been a co-sponsor of the expanded bottle bills for decades, well, years anyways now. I think that it's become clear that a 5-cent deposit on soft drinks and on beer, number one, the 5 cents is too low, and number two, it doesn't cover enough. So clearly, we need to, if we're gonna run on an issue, if we're gonna have a bottle bill, let's have a bottle bill that works. Because quite frankly, a nickel isn't enough to make people return their bottles and cans, most people. I realize, Pat, I am sure you do. And I'm sure a lot of the people watching right now do, but I know most people probably aren't. And then secondly, we also know that thankfully people are getting away from soda and they're, moving into bottled water and other types of drinks that aren't covered by the bottle bill. So we either need a whole new system, and I'm not sure what that is, or expand the bottle bill to 10 cents a bottle and expand a larger thing. I think, although I believe in this, I think that there is a divergence of opinion within the state legislature about whether or not we need to expand the bottle bill or come up with some other whole new system for recycling. So I want to keep an open mind on this. The Senate tried to tack an expanded bottle bill onto the climate bill. That's an example, quite frankly, of what the Senate was doing, of making the bill too big and tacking on things that really aren't part of a climate bill, to be honest with you, or an economic development bill. And that's not a good way to try to get a bill onto the governor's desk, is when you make a bill too big. So that's my views on this. Pat, let me ask you, you probably know more about the whole recycling issues now. Is the answer to expand the bottle bill like I talked about, or to come up with a whole new system?
Well, I personally, I would like to see it expanded. I don't know, someone like Maine, I guess, has a somewhat more expanded bottle bill covering water bottles and Gatorade. All these new drinks, alcoholic drinks, are not covered. There are a lot of people not drinking, traditional beer and so forth anymore, and soda they're drinking. So the bottling companies,
like a White Claw covered or a High Noon covered right now.
well, I think it would incentivize people to not litter as much, pick up more youth scout and youth groups getting out and collecting, bottles and cans to raise money for things. I just think it would incentivize a whole crew of people who would pick up litter.
You know anybody like that, Pat?
Yeah, fair to say, David, that, and Pat, I guess I'd ask the question of both of you. As that's coming up in legislation and people are thinking about the strategies to go forward, I'm assuming, Pat, you're open to David contacting you to get further input?
Absolutely, because, you know,
Yeah.
so, let me say this. I don't know everything about everything. If I did, I would be lying. But some of my best ideas for legislation have come from people just coming up to me and say, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, Pat's a local treasure, so.
He is the local
use
treasurer.
him, so.
He is the local treasurer.
Great, let's go to Bev. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, let's see if I have enough of a voice to do this. My recollection is when you first got into the legislature, your enthusiasm and idealism was tempered by the outsized role of the speaker and the necessity to basically fall in line completely with the speaker's agenda and be a loyal, faithful in order to get anything of your own done. Can you comment on how, if at all, that has changed over the years?
Well, let me say this. The speaker, when I first got in, was a guy named Tom Finneran. Okay. Tom and I butted heads like you wouldn't believe, because I was young and brash, I will say. But then we learned to understand each other and we learned to respect each other. And then since then, I've served under 3 separate Democratic speakers. I think that part of that comes, not because I'm falling in line with anybody. I think that would be a complete misstatement of fact, to be honest with you. There are times when I'm gonna go along with the speaker, and there's times when I'm not gonna go along with the speaker. But you have to learn what is important to you and to your district, okay? And you have to realize that you have to get along with your colleagues if you want. One person out of 200 legislators can get absolutely nothing done. And when I mean that, you will get nothing done legislatively, you will get nothing done for your district, and you will get nothing done for your constituents who need help. If you are 1 out of 200. But 81 people in the House can get something done. And a good speaker knows more than anything else how to count votes. And when 81 people can get together in the House, and we have on numerous occasions, we have gotten a lot of important stuff done that the speaker initially was opposed to. But you have to learn how to work within the building, you have to learn how to work with your colleagues, and you have to learn how to you have to learn what's important and how to pick your spots. And I think I have a tremendous record of that. Look, Tom Finneran was against gay marriage. We have gay marriage. Tom Finneran was completely anti-abortion. We have strong laws in Massachusetts that I have fought very hard for, have sponsored, have co-sponsored, and we have laws that now protect abortion rights and reproductive rights in Massachusetts. You have to learn how to get things done. And, you know, do I agree with the current speaker and everything? Absolutely not. But does he respect me? Does he understand that there are some things that I'm going to be strong on and can't give in on? Absolutely. And that's fine. But, you know, you just have to learn how to play within the system. That's where I am.
Pick your battles, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like parenting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Raising three sons has been pretty good training. And also being a youth sports coach.
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Bev. Martin, you're up.
Bev and I are in different rooms. She has COVID and I'm desperately trying not to catch it, so.
Me for a few days.
But my question may actually relate in some way. I know this isn't a debate format, but your opponent has made a big issue about transparency and accountability. And I know you've responded to some of that in a Facebook post a while ago, and I just want to give you a chance to share some of that if you want to. I mean, some of the issues I believe are things like the amount of notice that a bill will have before being brought to the floor, whether committee votes are public, the term limits for speakers, and a bunch of other issues like that. Do you have any comments you want to make about some of those issues?
A lot of comments on those, Mark. Okay. So give me a few minutes here, okay?
Yeah. And if it's possible to answer without kind of name checking, that way we can kind of keep this as a format.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's fine.
It's an issue that a lot of people, maybe that don't see the inside guts, have a legitimate concern about.
Sure. So let me try to give you some perspective on that. So I get literally couple hundred emails, telephone calls, letters a day from constituents, a week from constituents. So that adds up to over 25 years. Many thousand, I will say, constituent inquiries and issues. The vast majority of those issues are healthcare, education, economy, taxes, reproductive rights, gun control, environmental issues, climate change, whatever. We put them into categories so that I know what my constituents are talking about, what they're concerned about. Out of those many thousands, I don't think I've gotten more than 5 on issues of rules and procedure in my 25 years as a legislator. Maybe 10, 5 or 10. But what it comes down to is probably less than 0.1% of the constituent inquiries I get are on rules and procedure. I think that people in general are much more concerned about the end result of a piece of legislation rather than the process that the legislature used to get there. And I think that probably 99% of the people have no idea what the process was anyways on how to get there. Okay, so that's I want to put this into context about what I think people in Massachusetts and in my district are concerned about. So the answer is, yeah, there's a few people concerned about it, but I think the vast majority of people really, quite frankly, are concerned about other issues. So now I'm going to talk about what the process is to get the process, okay? So at the start of every legislative session, usually within the first couple weeks in January, or maybe the beginning of February, we have what's known as a rule debate. And there is a package of rules that are put on the floor by the Democratic caucus. And we reach those package of rules as Democrats, because we're in the majority. We reach those rules, that package, after having conversations and caucuses and discussions and debates among the Democratic members of the House. And currently there's about 135 Democrats and 25 Republicans. And we come up with a consensus package of rules that we as a Democratic majority put on the floor of the House, and they're going to be, and then we have to have votes on that package, okay? That's the process we do it at the beginning of every legislative session. So I participate, every other member has an opportunity to participate on what those rules should look like. When that package is put on the floor, the Republican Party, the 25 members, through their leadership, propose a series of amendments. And they try to force roll call votes on each and every one of their amendments. And what you have seen that I may have been criticized by some on is voting against the Republican sponsored amendments. Okay, the Republican sponsored amendments. Now, I get it. When you isolate some of those votes, they're saying, what do you mean? So let me talk about some of the specific ones here. Okay. One that has been put out there is not requiring all committee votes of all joint Senate House committees to be put online on mass.gov. Okay. Yeah, I voted against that. So let me tell you how I handle my own voting record and my own transparency, because I think that's what's most important. So since I've been in the House, I've taken about 5,000 roll call votes. Every single one of those votes is online on mass.gov. Since I have been in the House, I have chaired 2 committees. The votes on all of those 2 committees that I chaired, they were all public, they were all open, they were all available. Because under the rules that the Democrats put forward it is up to each committee to establish its own rules. The rules that I put forth on the committees that I chaired and went along with my committee members were, they're going to be open and they're going to be public. Similarly, any committee that I currently sit on, they're open, they're public, they're available. If anybody wants to contact me, my office, or the committees that I sit on, and they ask for a vote on a specific bill, rule, whatever, we give it to them, no problem. I am personally 100% transparent and open. What I will not do, however, is tell my 159 colleagues in the House and 40 colleagues in the Senate how they should handle their own issue with their constituents. That's between them and their constituents. And that's why I voted against that. And that's why the Democratic caucus decided to say no to the Republican minority and put that on there. You brought up the 48-hour thing, okay? You are not doing your job as a legislature if you don't, as a legislator, excuse me, if you don't know what's in the bill way before 48 hours it comes to the floor. Because you should be, if you're involved in the process at all, which I always am on any bill that's going to get to the floor, you should be talking to the committee chairman, you should be talking to the members of the committee that the bill is come out of, and you should know what's in it. You know, the reality is that I know about bills and what's in the bills way before they hit the floor. So that what my colleagues do, again, I'm not going to tell my colleagues how they should run. That's between them and their constituents. So that's my feeling on that too. And I can tell you that, again, we Democrats in the House, we take it very seriously about being part of a team, because we've got, what we don't want to be is part of the Republican Party. I'm going to say that. We've got a Republican Party in this country that is scary, that is anti-American, that is anti-democratic, small d democratic. Good job. Look at the end result. So that's my answer.
If I could ask one follow-up question, and then we'll go to Carrie.
Yeah.
And I may be mistaken in this, but I think you said earlier in your remarks that if you look at what the legislature has accomplished, Massachusetts is one of the more effective state legislatures.
Absolutely.
I think I've heard that on transparency measures, that I'll put in air quotes, that the Massachusetts ranks poorly.
Well,
is it just a case of the sausage that tastes good and not how it's made?
Let me say this. Clearly, they want the sausage to taste good. Okay. And it tastes damn good in Massachusetts. We do so much more as a state legislature than what most other states do, that there'll always be somebody who isn't happy with what came out. And that's when you get a criticism of the sausage making, okay? You know, you talked about where we're ranked, you know, not transparent, okay? Well, look at who's doing the rankings, okay? Number one, our state legislature website has actually won all kinds of awards the last few years for having so much information on it. And we have something called, this is amazing. We have something called Open Checkbook in Massachusetts that's available online through mass.gov, where every single state expense is actually listed, and you can search via vendor and via, you know, it's incredible. You know, I mean, do people take advantage of this? No, but it's there, okay? And it's, you know, to say that we're not transparent, I think is really doing a disservice to the 200 members of the state legislature. Look, I told you what my own policy is. My policy is I am personally 100% transparent. People call me up all the time and they'll say, Linsky, what's your position on this bill? I tell them, okay? It's no big secret, you know? But I'm not gonna tell my colleagues how to shit. That's a way, quite frankly, you start telling your colleagues how to act, that's a way to get absolutely nothing done.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Carrie, you've been patient. You're up next.
Thank you for that, David. I had to wait for duty, so I missed a subject that was near and dear to me. Recycling. What I was going to say, I know the family was near and dear, was instrumental in getting recycling going here in Natick. What you might not know about me, because it was 30 years ago when I lived in Alston Brighton area, is I helped to get curbside going in Boston. And about the bottle bill, Janet Dominus had asked me to present testimony at the State House a number of years ago. I forget. I knew it was on Valentine's Day for some reason. That sticks out. Get what year. She was trying to expand the bottle bill, Massburg was, and she just asked me to talk about it. And I came up with this little imaginary thing. I said, if we don't do something about the number of water bottles that are being just tossed away, they can retire the ferry that goes to P-Town, plastic bridge that you could walk across to P-Town. So many plastic bottles. And the feedback, or what we got back, is that they just view this as another, DeLeo especially, just view this as another tax on the residents of Massachusetts. And I guess that's carried over to Mariana. Will this logjam ever get broken, I guess?
If 81 people want to do it, the answer is yes. You can do anything in the House with 81 people, okay? And I think that every speaker knows that even if they're personally opposed to something, if 81 of their members make it very clear they want to do it, they'll do it. I can tell you, you know, I've been in meetings with various speakers through the years when they've been opposed to something, and then we gave them a list of 81 names, and all of a sudden it was on the floor. So you just have to know how to do it and work with your colleagues.
Yeah, we had Raymond Flynn didn't want to get curbside recycling going. He worked with a number of city councilors, long since gone, but it wasn't until Tom Menino became mayor that he was able to usher this in fairly quickly. So it took us 4 years of meeting monthly at City Hall in Boston before this finally happened.
Yeah, things don't happen overnight. If you think that you know, you can get things done immediately, you're just kidding yourself. You know, it's, you know, there are people, believe me, I've got plenty of constituents who are happy when the legislature doesn't do something. Okay, there's an old saying about it that the Commonwealth is safer when the legislature isn't in session. Okay, you know, we've got 6.5 million people here, and we've got to try to balance the income of everybody. It's a slow, deliberative process for a reason.
Like making
Thanks. If I could go to Cindy and Catherine, and then we can get to you, Donna. So just Cindy, you gotta come off mute.
Yeah. So I was going to ask about the transparency issue, but Martin beat me to it. But I guess a second question is, do you think that the Massachusetts legislature as a whole works pretty well, or and if not, you know, what do you see room for, like, how could it be better if, and assuming that you don't want to change the rules and tell your colleagues how they should do things on the transparency issue, but are there other things that would make the legislative process more efficient? I could sense you're a little frustrated with how some things didn't quite get done by the end of the formal session.
Yeah, no, look, again, I think what the vast majority of my constituents care about is the end result, okay? Whereby, you know, I think overall in Massachusetts, I think people are pretty happy. And I think in my district, people are really happy. When you look at the quality of the economy in Natick and Wayland, the quality of schools in Natick and Wayland, the quality of healthcare in Natick and Wayland, the quality of life, quite frankly, in Natick and Wayland, I think they're pretty damn happy, okay? We can pick around the edges on a lot of things, but I think that overall, people are very well satisfied. And like I said, you know, I get thousands and thousands of constituent contacts every year. No more than 5 people, 10 people tops care about procedural issues. They really don't. They want to know the bottom line. You know, I'm proud of what I'm able, of the way that I communicate with my colleagues. I'm very proud of that, but I'm not going to force my colleagues to do something different. That's a way to get nothing done. That's a way to get nothing done.
Yeah.
Yes, that wasn't really my question.
Yeah, Cindy's question wasn't so much transparency, but are there other things that don't work as well in the legislative process that you wish could change? I mean, I sense what you're saying is it's not the best application of your energy to work on those.
Okay.
But that being said, are there, is it that a little closer to?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I'm trying to answer that. I wish that I suppose there are, I wish that it were easier for me to bring bills to the floor that I care about more deeply. And that I'm not afraid to take a vote and lose, I will say. I'm not afraid to take a vote and lose. So that whereby I don't want to criticize my colleagues, okay? But it might be said, I'm gonna answer this gentleman. It might be said that there are some legislators in my experience through my last 25 years that don't are uncomfortable voting for something that might not be passing the majority, I will say. So I suppose the answer to that is, you know, put more bills on the floor. But I think that this, you know, most legislative leaders in history will only put bills on the floor if the votes are there to pass it.
I see. Okay.
That sort of, the legislative leader sees that as part of his or her job. And I'm gonna just give you a little secret. The Massachusetts House has a whole lot more roll calls than the Senate does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just sort of the nature of the beast.
Catherine, let's, you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself. I know, I'm sure David knows who you are, but I'm gonna come off mute, Captain Coughlin, and ask you a question. Possibly she's away from the computer.
Yeah.
Let's go on to Brinley. Brinley?
Good morning. Thank you for being here. Hi, Dave. So the first thing I'll say is thank you so much always for your green initiatives. I'm very happy for how that works and for the continued effort for it. I have a couple, I'll just get them all out at once. The first would be where you are about electric buses. If you said that already in the beginning and I missed it, sorry for that. I get a lot of asks about that. I am curious where you stand, how you think you could help move more legislation forward to help us get buses, etc. The next question would be the status of the home rule petitions that we've sent to the House. I know they were last year. I think it was like maybe 18 months. I'm not sure exactly how long. But especially with all of the building that we have going on in town and all of the new retail space and that will be opening up relatively shortly in the grand scheme of things. I am especially interested in the alcohol part of that. I do feel like we're probably losing business. So I would love to know what the status is of those three of the special act for those. Thank you.
Happy to do it. So in my time, I've probably done, 50 home rule petitions for Natick and the other towns that have all been signed into law. We do the home rule petitions that don't require a roll call generally after July 31st. They're all going to get done before the end of the year. On one of the alcohol petitions, you should know this. I fully support giving the select board the power to do the seating requirements on their own without state approval. When Natick, I mean, this is very, very technical. Natick, for some reason, when we went from dry to wet years ago, used the wrong chapter and section that we could have used as a town. This is long before I was a state legislature, and it's made it more difficult for the selectmen to do the rules and regs about alcohol. We're gonna fix that hopefully by the end of the year. And then secondly, Natick, Natick has 13 available liquor licenses out there for restaurants. So don't think that there's anything in the state level that's keeping that from happening. And hopefully with a lot of the development we have in downtown Natick, there's gonna be restaurants that will want to come in and get those licenses. So the home rule petitions, don't worry about them. They're gonna get done by the end of the year. Electric buses and local buses, okay. The MBTA just signed a contract, a big one, to move towards electric buses. So, but I'll tell you, the MBTA has been a problem for maybe 200 years. If you've got a solution to fix the MBTA, would you please become governor? Because no governor has been able to fix that, which is the oldest public transportation system in the country. And I'm glad you brought up local buses, because I was part of establishing the MWRTA. Remember, originally there was not a local regional transit authority until Senator Spilka and I got that done and we established it. And they are moving, they've got a lot of gas powered buses right now. I don't know if they're moving to electric right now, but they're very forward thinking and in terms of the services that they're providing right now. So that's why I am doing.
Great. Yeah, Donna.
First of all, your communication skills are unequaled. I don't know.
That is because of the Natick competitive speech program, and you know that. I was a state and New England champion at Natick High School. The most important thing I've ever done.
It shows, but I have to say, just in your ordinary exchanges, you probably don't remember this, but I was taking care of my very seriously ill father and was exacerbated and ran into you in front of Roach Brothers years ago, waxing on about the inequities and the horribleness of the healthcare system. And you were such a wonderful listener. And of course, you couldn't fix it on the federal level, but I did smile when I saw the healthcare, the Romney Care bill that went through later. And I am so happy. I mean, it didn't go through, but there's one part in the bills that didn't go through about one prescription drug for $25 a month copay that a person would be able to choose. And having one prescription that without insurance for myself, now that's $1,400. I do have help, but it's still a lot of money. That is a really big deal. And I'm patient. I can take a long view. I'm hoping that'll come back again, and I trust you that will come back again. But I have to say, you always respond, and so quickly. And I unfortunately had a family issue with guns that I never imagined that I would have. I think I called and talked to somebody in your office. You called me back immediately. And the words that you gave were really helpful. I was dealing with a cousin who since died, so I now have an estate situation, but your communication skills are amazing. I've also seen the way that you interact with students during like a Metco day or something, your tours of the State House. You're like a quintessential teacher. And I've seen a lot of bad teachers. Actually. I'm an academic, so I admire that. So this is gonna seem like a weird question. And I say it because there's also a lot of ageism in our society today. Somebody posted something stupid on Facebook about how somebody was 62 at the Olympics and they shouldn't have been allowed to like be entrusted with the flag because they were 62. And I know, I just recoil at that. Perhaps it's myself getting older, but it's been a tough week. 3 people from my high school class died. 2 yesterday. So how, and I don't want you to step down, but how will you know when it's time? And how are you empowering like the next generation of legislators? Because I've seen you again in action. You're an incredible teacher. I know you have interns. And I just wondered if you had given any thought to this.
Sure. No, that's fair.
Don't step down.
Well, okay. So I'll step down when I don't think I'm effective then. That's number one.
Okay.
Okay. Or when they win the lottery, and move. Or let me say this, or when I used to have a dream of playing center field for the Boston Red Sox, and that's probably not gonna happen, but if that does happen, it'll be time to put stuff down. So let me tell you some things that I'm really proud of. So I've always had what I consider to be the best staff in the State House. I'm very, very particular about who I hire. I've got, when I look back at some of the things for the people who have either been on my professional staff or interned for me through the years, some really great people. Elena Van Tassel, who was my chief of staff for years, is now a deputy treasurer for the Commonwealth. She lives in Natick. Kate Kelly, who was my staff director for 13 years. She's now the chief of staff to one of the secretaries. I've had great interns who've gone on to really good things. And I've always taken interns from Natick in the district as well too. And I'm very proud of that. I've mentored so many younger legislators coming into the State House. They call me Elder Linsky in the Progressive Caucus. Because I'm the one who says, this is what's gonna happen, this is how it's gonna go, I'm pretty good predictor of what's gonna happen in the floor of the House. And obviously I've had opportunities to run for Congress. I've had opportunities to run for DA. I've had opportunities to run for state senate. But I like the house. The house is the people's house. And I love Natick. If I ran for Congress and I won, I'd have to move to DC. I don't want to do that. Look, I've lived my entire life in this town. I know a huge percentage of the people in this town. I love going into Roach Brothers and seeing people I know and talking. You're stuck with me, I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's just priceless, and
Yeah.
thank you for like giving us a little peek at how you already mentor future
Oh,
generations
yeah,
of
no,
leaders.
you walk around the chamber, you'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just circle back. Catherine, are you at the computer?
Yes, actually, I haven't stepped away. I'm on my phone and I can never remember how to unmute myself on my phone. So I apologize for that. I wasn't going to touch on this, but I wanted to go back to Brinley's comment about the alcohol licenses. We do have alcohol licenses, but the policy that we want to undo, which was sent in the petition, is the 100-seat minimum. And the spaces that are being built now in the by Stonegate across from St. Pat's, they're getting inquiries about restaurants, but there isn't going to be spaces for 100 seats. And it's the same thing on Washington Street. So other than the mall, we have no spaces or construction pending for new areas where restaurants could open, and those local option taxes are just so critical. I look at Wellesley, which liberated or loosened their seating policy and their intent to eat policy 2 years ago, and they've opened 12 to 15 restaurants. So that's local option taxes where Natick families, including myself, if I'm not at, Buttercup or one of the other places around town, I end up going to Wellesley and spending my money, and, that's unfortunate. So by the end of the year, may be too late, David, because those leases are being signed now.
Thank you, Catherine. Senator Spilker and I will get right on it.
Okay, then the one question I had for you, it's just kind of a curiosity question. And last budget year, we were 45th out of 50 in the nation in passing our budget. This year we were dead last. Why since the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the governors, why isn't that process more efficient?
Because we have a $58 billion budget. And it was 2.5 weeks late. We did a temporary budget to fill in that 2.5 weeks. It's just, we want to get it right rather than on time. Getting it right is the most important thing. We do so much more in our budget than what most other states do. Look, would we prefer it done on July 1st? Yeah, it got done on July 20 something. It's fine. It's
Yeah, I was just curious. I was
It's
just
the
curious
reality.
about the statistic. That's all. It was just a kind of a government geeky kind of thing.
The Globe likes to complain about it every year, but then people forget about it, though, so.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks
that's
for
fair.
that. We're starting to close in on 10:30, which isn't necessarily a hard stop, but you probably.
I
have other
get
things
a
to
hard
do.
stop.
Yeah, okay. So Rick's been very patient, and then I also do have a question of my own before we go back to Carrie. So Rick, go ahead. Just gotta come off mute there. There you go.
I hit it too many times. Thank you, David, for all your sharing today and for being here again. Just two really quick things. First one, really quick. You mentioned the MBTA signing, I guess, a contract for electric buses. Is there a phase-in timetable for that you know about? When might we expect?
I have to check on the timing on that. The problem is you can't go to the electric bus store and buy a bus. These things have to get built, then that takes time, so that's the reality, yeah.
Right, so, you don't have a crystal ball, but we're not going to expect to see him this year, next year, or the year after, maybe. But
They're gonna build it, and it takes forever to build it.
Yeah, well, I assume there's a queue for this, because I think a lot of other organizations and states are probably doing it. The second thing is just whether you had a sense from any discussions with others on the climate bill about whether the private jet expansion at Hanscom was likely to stay in this bill when it gets around to getting done.
I was proud to be a co-sponsor of the amendment that's gonna push that back. I think the answer is yes, because both the House and the Senate did it, so.
Okay, so you don't feel that that's one of the sticking points, like the bottle?
And actually, the House language was stronger than the Senate language, so.
Yeah, no, I know of your sponsorship and the language, and all that's great. I just wondered if you had a sense of if others do this as an add-on, a late add-on to a bill that.
As an add-on, but when both the House does something and the Senate does something, the odds are pretty damn good it's gonna stay in the final version.
Thank you, David.
Great.
Keep at it.
I wanted to go all the way back to your opening statement where you're talking about kind of getting involved in public service, that was kind of your calling. You also mentioned that, you know, about your brother and the Vietnam War and that you were against that war. But I'm also mindful of all the times you've spoken at Veterans Appreciation Services on Veterans Day, and I think it's your dad, maybe it was a World War II vet, and whether we're for or against individual wars, the notion that military service is also a form of public service.
Oh, absolutely.
I was just curious if you would like to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, everybody's different. Everybody finds their way. But I have one thing that my dad instilled in me, you know, he fought in the Pacific in World War II, was how honorable it is to be in the US military. And, you know, look, I take Massachusetts has the best statewide veterans benefits of any state in the country. I have always supported those bills, voted for those bills, whatever. Paul can tell you, I go to all these square namings because I believe in this. And my father absolutely instilled that in me. I did not serve because that was not in my plan.
Yeah.
But I absolutely respect anybody who did.
Okay. I wish there was a way that national service programs could be expanded beyond just military.
Yeah,
service.
you know, I'm
So
a
much.
big believer in, you know, remember like the Robert Kennedy Corps and the Vista volunteers. And, you know, actually, you know what, let me talk about, somebody who doesn't get enough recognition as somebody that we should all look up to, and it's Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at how Jimmy Carter has lived his life, you talk about somebody who lives his values. And, you know, as long, you know, banging nails in houses at his age and his health, I mean, really tremendous stuff. You know?
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Carrie's been patient. It is
wanna jump
time for Carrie. Yeah.
Sure.
Paul, you want to jump in? I bet it's something about what was just discussed. I defer to you, Paul.
Well, if you don't mind, real quickly, I just want to reiterate what Linsky was just saying. You know, Vietnam is a long time ago. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I have a brother-in-law that was a conscientious objector. He actually went to Canada for a little while. Our opinions during the Vietnam War and the turmoil and so forth, our opinions. We grow over those, David, as you know. You've been one of my staunchest supporters in the legislature for the veterans in the town of Natick, and you attendance as many of the town services as you can. You make a hell of a lot of them, David, and that means a lot to me as a humble Marine veteran from Vietnam. And I thank you for your hard work and your dedication to our veterans and to the flag of this country. God bless you, brother.
Paul, I appreciate it. It means a lot to me.
Thanks for that testimonial, Paul. Carrie, back to you.
I know you've lived here your entire life, David. I've only been here 21 years. One issue that we can all see is traffic here in Natick. I mean, you know, with all the constructions taking place, it's just going to exacerbate things. I mean, heading west on 135, trying to get to Speen Street at 2:30 in the afternoon, the traffic is backed up to the dark part. I mean, it's nuts. I talked to Paul.
Where I drive the same road you do, Gary.
I talked to Paul Joseph about, you know, could through eminent domain or whatever, the state, the county, take over some of CVS's little yard that's not used for anything and create a third lane just for right-hand, you know, turns there onto Speen Street. Well, he said there's 3 bodies of water at 4 of the corners. 3 of the 4 corners have water bodies. How big of an obstacle would that be? I know it'd be a massive project. It would disrupt traffic for years possibly, but the long run, it would make things so much easier, especially with all the more traffic that's going to be coming into Natick with all the construction. It's a double-edged sword there.
Gary, that is literally the first time I've heard that suggestion.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer for you.
That's why I wanted to bring it up.
I ain't a traffic engineer. I know, nor do I play one on TV to know whether it would help or hurt.
Yeah.
You know, CBS might have something to say about it too. But you know, it's interesting. You know, people complain about like all the construction projects we have going on right now, obviously. You know, oh, you can't drive anywhere in town, there's traffic, you know, there's construction here, whatever. But then, you know, you have a choice. You can either get the work done or you can have the construction delays. I mean, you can't have it both ways. I mean, you really can't. I don't know what people, you know, expect. You know, we've been trying to get the Route 27, Route 9 bridge done for a decade now. We finally get approval and people start complaining, oh no, this is gonna be awful. I mean, what, you know, what's the alternative? You know, this is reality.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, reality is not nirvana. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. This is something very quick.
It's very quick.
Yeah.
It's your Jimmy Carter comment. Somebody asked him, was he looking forward to being 100? And he said, I'm hoping to live long enough to vote in November.
Good.
So I just want to remind people that reminded me of that, the importance of voting. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Voting matters.
Yeah.
Well, I have never, so let me just tell you something. I have literally never missed an election since I was 18. I have an absolutely perfect voting record. And I also in the House, I think I'm like 99.9% roll call in the whole time that I have been there. You know, and I want to talk about local elections for a second, you know, for select board, school committee, town meeting, all that. Those elections have more direct effect in your life than the president of the United States does. It decides whether or not your schools get funded, your roads get built, your trash gets picked up, real quality of life stuff. So I don't think you're doing your job if you don't vote in local elections. So yeah, I'm gonna say that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. You know, I think we've really gotten a chance to, those of us that didn't know you as well, it's been a good 90 minutes, and we look forward next week to hearing a similar from Shaman. And I think it will equip us a lot better for the state primary coming up. So
thank you very much.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Martin, I think you can turn off the recording.